The grand hall of Aurelis had witnessed many historic moments, but never one like this. The hall was vast, built from living crystal that reflected light like flowing water. Thousands of alien nobles stood in perfect order, their elegant robes glowing with colors that changed with emotion. This was the heart of the Surati Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. At the center, upon a raised throne of white stone, sat Empress Phil. Her presence alone demanded silence. She had ruled for centuries. Wars had ended with a single word from her mouth. Entire species feared her judgment. Beside her stood her only daughter, Princess Lyrene Valseris. She was young, graceful, and calm, with silver eyes that carried both kindness and strength. Many powerful beings wished to claim her hand warlords, royal heirs, and legendary commanders. Today, the Empress had summoned the court to hear her daughter's choice. Everyone expected a noble name. Everyone was wrong. Princess Lyrene stepped forward. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, but her face showed no fear. She had thought about this moment for many cycles. She knew what it would cost her. She knew what would happen if she failed. She raised her arm, her finger pointed across the great hall toward a single figure standing alone near the entrance. A human man. Gasps rippled through the chamber like a sudden storm. This is the man I want as my husband. Mum, the princess said clearly. Her voice was steady, strong. He is the one I choose. The hall fell into stunned silence. The human froze. His name was Daniel Carter, and he had never wanted to stand out in his life. He wore no royal armor, no medals, no weapons. Just simple clothes, slightly worn. He looked painfully out of place among beings who ruled star systems. His hands trembled as thousands of alien eyes turned toward him. Whispers exploded around the room. A human, from the fragile species. No bloodline. No power. Is this a joke? Daniel felt his throat tighten. He looked at Princess Lyrene in disbelief, his eyes silently asking why. She met his gaze and gave a small, gentle smile. That smile reminded her of the first time she had seen him. Years ago, back then, she was not a princess. She was a pilot trapped inside a burning scout ship near human space. Her engines were dead, life support failing. Death was certain. Then a human vessel arrived, against orders. Against logic, Daniel had boarded the damaged ship alone. He had cut through sealed metal with his own hands. He had carried injured strangers without knowing their species. When asked who she was, he had simply said, "You're safe now." He never bowed, he never begged, he never asked for reward. Now he stood here, surrounded by power that could crush him in seconds. The Empress slowly rose from her throne. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. "Daughter," Empress Valera said, her voice calm but dangerous. "Repeat what you have just said." Princess Lyrene lifted her chin. "I choose the human," she said again. "I choose Daniel Carter." A sharp wave of anger passed through the nobles. The Empress's glowing eyes locked onto Daniel. "Human," she said. "Step forward." Daniel's legs felt weak, but he moved. Each step felt heavier than the last. He stopped at the center of the hall, standing alone under the gaze of an empire. He wanted to speak, but no words came. Princess Lyrene stepped beside him. She did not touch him, but her presence gave him strength. "I know what this looks like," she said to the court. "You see weakness. You see a species, still young, but I see something. Rare, she turned to her mother. He does not rule. Others, she said softly. He protects. Them, the Empress did not answer. Her silence was far more terrifying than anger. Far away, alarms began to sound quietly in the background of the hall. Political tensions stirred. Ancient laws awakened. The choice made seconds ago was already shaken the foundation of the empire. Daniel looked at Princess Lorene again, and for the first time, he realized something terrifying. This moment was no longer just about love, it was about survival. Daniel Carter had never imagined that a single word from a princess could change his entire life. He was just a humaner, simple man. From a quiet planet, a skilled engineer, and a rescuer of ships. He fixed what was broken. He saved lives. And he tried, always, to stay invisible in the vastness of space. Fame had never called him, and glory had never mattered. He had spent his life quietly, doing what was right, without expecting thanks. And yet, here he was, in the heart of the Surati Empire, surrounded by thousands of beings who could crush him with a thought, standing beside the princess who had just declared him worthy of her love and the throne. He felt a chill as all eyes focused on him. Their whispers cut sharper than knives. A human. One noble hissed, "He has no lineage." Another muttered, "No training, no honor, no legacy." A third added, shaking its glowing head. Daniel swallowed. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He had faced collapsing ships, deadly storms, and alien war zones. But nothing had prepared him for this. Not centuries of alien tradition, not a hall filled with gazes that could pierce steel. He looked at Princess Lorene. She stood tall, unshaken, her silver eyes fixed on him with trust and warmth. Somehow, that small gesture, her belief in him, made his knees feel lighter. For the first time in his life, he realized that maybe he wasn't invisible. He remembered the day he first met her. It had been a rescue mission. A Surati scout ship caught in a violent meteor storm. Daniel had volunteered without hesitation. The ship was crumpled, oxygen running out, fire spreading through the corridors. Every instinct told him to get out alive. Every human instinct screamed for self-preservation. But when he saw the young Surati pilot trapped behind a collapsed wall, he ignored fear. He had lifted debris heavier than his body, risking life after life until she was free. She had looked at him, stunned. Why? Why would a human help me? She had asked. "I don't know your people," he had said, sweat and soot covering his face. "But no one should die if I can stop it." That day, she had seen something in him that no human or alien could teach. Courage without expectation, honor without pride, and kindness in its purest form. And now, years later, she was standing beside him, declaring before her mother and the empire that she wanted him not for his strength, or his lineage, or even his intelligence, but for the man he was. Daniel's mind spun. This was insane. The Surati Empire had never accepted outsiders into the royal family. Alliances were forged through blood, power, or conquest. Simple human honesty. He had no idea how to navigate this world of shimmering politics, endless tradition, and alien expectations. He was a human nobody. Yet, he also realized that Lorene had chosen him. And that fact made all the fear melt into something new, something stronger. He could not fail her. He could not disappoint her. He shifted his weight nervously as whispers continued to fill the hall. Every noble's gaze felt like fire. Every glowing robe seemed to judge him. And then the Empress herself stepped forward, her presence more terrifying than any army. "Human," Empress Valera said, her silver eyes boring into him like molten light. "Tell me, why should my daughter choose you? What can you offer the Serati Empire?" Daniel's mouth went dry. He swallowed hard. His voice shook, but he forced it steady. "I don't offer power," he said. "I don't offer weapons, or armies, or wealth. I am just a man, but I can promise this Psi will protect her. I will never betray her. I will stand with her, even if it costs my life." A silence filled the hall, so thick it pressed against his chest. The Empress's gaze remained locked on him, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, her features softened. Princess Lyrine took a step closer, placing a small hand on his arm, not touching in a formal way, but as a gesture of trust and hope. "This is who I choose," she said, her voice firm. "Not because he is perfect, not because he is strong, but because he is human, and that humanity is rare in a galaxy filled with ambition and fear. He is brave, honest, loyal, and he is kind." Daniel's chest tightened. The words, spoken in front of thousands, made his knees feel weak. He had saved lives, yet but never for recognition, never for love. And now, the human who had believed only in doing what was right without expecting reward was being judged worthy of a princess, a throne, and the attention of an entire empire. He glanced at Lyrine again. Her smile was calm, reassuring, and radiant. She was willing to face centuries of tradition, politics, and judgment all for him. And in that moment, Daniel understood something he had never known. Sometimes, being human, simply being human, was more powerful than any weapon, more respected than any crown, and more valuable than any empire. He had survived storms, battles, and death itself. But this standing alone in the hall, chosen by a princess, tested by an empire, was the greatest challenge of all. He took a deep breath, and he decided he would not run. He would face whatever the Serati Empire could throw at him. For her, for love, and for the chance to prove that humanity, though fragile, could shine brighter than any star. The grand hall of Orlis was silent, but it did not feel peaceful. It felt like the moment before a storm. Empress Valera rose from her throne. Her robes shimmered like liquid light, her silver eyes glowing brighter than the stars above the hall. She was calm, but calm did not mean forgiving. The air around her trembled, and every noble in the chamber knew that her anger, when it came, would be absolute. "Daughter," she said slowly, each word cutting through the silence like a blade, "repeat what you have just said." Princess Lyrine lifted her head higher, her chin proud, her voice steady. "I choose the human. Daniel Carter will be my husband." A murmur ran through the chamber. The nobles whispered in disbelief, their voices almost a hiss. "Human!" One of the generals exclaimed, claws curling around the railing. "This is the Serati Empire. Our throne demands lineage, honor, and power. He has none of these. Perhaps he does not even understand our ways," a diplomat added. "This choice will shame our house and weaken our empire." Lyrine did not flinch. She took a step closer to Daniel, who remained frozen in place, his hands slightly shaking. His mind raced. He had faced storms, fire, and death in the void of space, but never had he faced an entire empire judging his very existence. Why? The Empress asked, her voice growing colder. Why would my daughter choose a human over our own people? Explain yourself, child. Lorene met her mother's gaze without hesitation. Because, mother, I have seen his heart. He does not fight for power. He does not lie, cheat, or manipulate. He acts with courage, even when no one watches. He protects those who cannot protect themselves. That is why I choose him. The Empress's eyes narrowed. She stepped down from her throne, moving toward Daniel like a shadow crossing the hall. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. Every step she took made him feel smaller, weaker, more fragile. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but his throat was dry, his hands trembling. Human, the Empress said, her voice echoing like thunder. Why should my daughter choose you? What can you offer the Sarati Empire? Daniel swallowed. He felt his knees wobble, but he squared his shoulders. He had survived the void, fought collapsing stations, and risked his life countless times. He could not falter now. I cannot give you armies, he said. I cannot give you riches. I cannot give you a throne. I am only a man. But I promise this. I will stand with her. I will protect her, and I will never betray her, even if it costs my life. The Empress studied him for what felt like an eternity. Her eyes glowed, judging, calculating, trying to see through his words, to find weakness. Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not look away. Lyrian's hand brushed against his arm, not as royalty, but as a gesture of faith. Her silver eyes met his. I believe in you, they said. That is why I chose you. The Empress finally spoke, her voice low and dangerous. You have courage, human. But courage is not enough. Loyalty is not enough. You have not survived what my people expect from those who rule by blood and power. Do you understand the traditions you are defying? If my daughter's choice brings shame to this empire, you will bear the consequences. Daniel swallowed. He had never been afraid of dying in space. He had never hesitated in the face of fire or metal tearing around him. But the idea of failing this moment, of failing her, made his stomach twist. I understand, he said quietly, and I accept it. A ripple of shock passed through the nobles. They could not believe the human had spoken with such calm resolve. The Empress's eyes flickered, and for the first time, a trace of curiosity replaced her fury. Lorene smiled softly. See, mother. He does not fear what he cannot control. He faces what must be faced, not for glory, but for what is right. That is why I love him. That is why I choose him. The Empress raised a hand, and the hall went completely silent. Even the floating lights dimmed slightly, as if the very room awaited her next words. You dare challenge centuries of law and tradition, daughter? She asked, her tone deadly. You would take the future of this empire and place it in the hands of a human. You gamble everything, your throne, your people, our legacy. This Lyrian's gaze did not waver. Yes, because sometimes, mother, the greatest strength is not power or bloodline. Sometimes it is heart, and no one I have ever met has a heart like his. The Empress's expression softened slightly, though her eyes still glimmered with steel. She turned to Daniel once more. Very well, human. You have been seen. You have spoken. But this empire will not yield so easily. If you truly wish to stand beside my daughter, you must prove yourself. You must survive the trials that await. Only then will we accept you. Daniel's jaw tightened. Trials, danger, tests. He had faced death before, but he now understood that these trials were more than life or death. They were the judgment of an empire, the measure of whether humanity could stand alongside the Serati. He looked at Lyrin. She smiled, her trust unwavering. That was all he needed. "I will do whatever it takes," he said. "I will prove myself, for her and for what is right." The Empress nodded slowly. "So be it. Let the trial begin." And in that instant, Daniel understood that his life, his humanity, and his love for the princess were about to face the greatest test the galaxy had ever known. The trial was set at the edge of the Serati, Empire's most dangerous space, the Shattered Expanse, a region where dying stars and broken planets created storms of radiation, debris, and chaos. It was a place that had claimed the lives of entire fleets. If Daniel failed, he would die. If he succeeded, he might earn the Empire's respect. He stood aboard a sleek Serati shuttle, the engines humming nervously under his hands. Around him, a team of elite Serati soldiers prepared for the mission, their glowing eyes full of doubt and scorn. They did not hide their disbelief. He was just a human, fragile, weak, untrained for the horrors that awaited. Princess Lyrian's voice came through the communicator. "You can do this, Daniel. I know you can. Remember, you do not need to be like them. You only need to be yourself." Her words settled over him like a shield. He drew a deep breath, gripping the controls. In his chest, he felt fear, yes, but also determination. This was no longer about being human in a room of aliens. This was about proving that humanity had a courage and heart that no star could extinguish. The distress signal came from a crumbling space station near a collapsing moon. Hundreds of Serati civilians were trapped inside. The station was falling apart, its energy failing, gravity fluctuating wildly. Debris spun around like deadly knives. "Human," a Serati commander sneered, "if you fail, we die. And so do they. Are you ready?" Daniel's lips pressed together. "I'm ready," he said quietly, and though his hands shook, he pushed the shuttle into the storm. The first impact rocked the ship violently. Metal groaned. Sparks flew. Alarms blared. Daniel's mind raced. He had studied space engineering. Yes, but no textbook prepared him for this chaos. Through the viewport, he saw the station twisting, metal snapping like paper, lights flickering in dangerous bursts. Inside, tiny human-shaped and alien-shaped shadows ran through corridors, screaming. Daniel's heart clenched. He could not fail. He would not fail. The shuttle shuddered as he entered the station, dodging collapsing beams and falling panels. He guided the craft carefully, his hands moving faster than he knew possible. At every turn, he had to make a choice: save one group of trapped civilians, or risk losing everyone. Then he saw her, not Lyrin, someone else. A Seratic child, no older than a cycle of 3, trapped beneath a fallen support beam. The child's eyes were wide with terror. Daniel's instinct kicked in. He jumped out of the shuttle, lifting the heavy beam with everything he had. Ignoring the sharp metal cutting his hands. "Go," he shouted, helping the child into the shuttle. But others were still trapped. Adults, elders, a family cornered by fire and smoke. He could not leave them. Time passed in seconds. He carried, pulled, crawled, and ran through the collapsing station. He distributed oxygen, patched broken suits, and guided terrified civilians into safety. Every moment, metal twisted, sparks fell, and walls crumbled. Every moment, death was inches away. The Sarati soldiers watched, some skeptical, some in disbelief. The human, they realized, was risking himself again and again, not for glory, not for reward, not for power, but purely to protect others. Finally, the station began to collapse completely. Daniel knew he could not save everyone if he stayed much longer, but he refused to leave the last group behind. He strapped a heavy panel onto his shuttle to hold a corridor open, then dove back to pull the remaining civilians one by one. Exhaustion burned through him. His lungs screamed. Cuts ran down his arms. But still, he moved. At the final moment, the station's core exploded. The shockwave threw Daniel into space. The shuttle groaned violently, flames licking its hull, but somehow it held together. He drifted, battered and bleeding, yet alive. The princess's voice broke through his communicator, trembling with relief. "Daniel, you made it. You saved them." He looked at the stars, his chest heaving. Hundreds of lives had been saved, not because of strength or skill or alien superiority, but because of one human's heart. The Sarati Council would not speak of the mechanics or the danger. They would only see the truth. Even if reluctantly, this human had courage beyond what many Sarati could imagine. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Daniel knew the hardest part was still ahead. The Empress would judge him next. He would have to prove he was not just lucky, but worthy of standing beside the princess he loved. But for now, he had survived. He had protected, and for the first time, he believed that perhaps the impossible might be possible. Humanity, fragile as it seemed, had shown its greatest strength. The grand hall of Orcs was quieter than Daniel had ever known it. Word of his actions had spread through the Sarati Empire like fire through dry grass. Every noble, soldier, and scholar whispered in awe disbelief about the human who had risked his life to save hundreds of Sarati civilians in the shattered expanse. Yet, not everyone was impressed. Some saw him as reckless, fragile, unfit. Others saw him as dangerous because he had shown that courage could exist outside tradition, outside lineage, outside power. The Empress stood on her throne, her expression unreadable. Around her, the council waited, their glowing eyes sharp, their voices restrained. They had summoned Daniel and Princess Lorene once more. It was time for the Empire to make a decision, and for Daniel to face its judgment. "Human," Empress Valera began, her voice calm but deadly. "You have proven bravery in the shattered expanse. You saved lives that many of my people would not risk for. You acted without reward, without pride. And yet, you remain human. You are untested in the matters of rulership, loyalty to the Empire, and survival in the face of political consequence." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "I understand, Your Majesty. I am not I do not know your customs perfectly. I only know that I will do my best to protect Princess Lorene and to act honorably in any way I can." The Empress's eyes glimmered with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, and yet loyalty alone is not enough to rule. Many before you have died or brought ruin upon this empire because they lacked judgment, cunning, or understanding of responsibility. Tell me, Daniel Carter, why should my daughter choose you above 1,000 Sarati nobles? Daniel looked at Lorene, who stood beside him, her silver eyes steady and encouraging. He drew a deep breath, because I love her. I may not be strong like your warriors, smart like your strategists, or noble like your rulers, but I will stand beside her, always. I will face danger for her, fight for her, and never betray her. That is what I can offer: my heart, my courage, and my loyalty. Nothing else." A ripple ran through the council. Some muttered among themselves, questioning whether such a simple human could truly understand the weight of ruling. But others, unexpectedly, exchanged glances that suggested respect. Princess Lorene stepped forward, her voice ringing like crystal in the hall. "Mother, I have seen what he is capable of. He does not act out of desire for power. He does not manipulate or deceive. He acts because it is right. That is why I choose him not for his strength, but for his heart. That is more valuable than any army, any throne, or any tradition." The Empress's gaze shifted between them, piercing, weighing, and calculating. She was testing him not for bravery or skill, but for character, for something far older and more subtle than physical courage. "You would marry a human," she said slowly, her voice heavy with centuries of authority. "A man who is unproven in the ways of politics, loyalty, and legacy. Do you understand the consequences of your choice, daughter?" "Yes, mother," Lorene replied. Her voice never wavered. "I do, and I accept them, because he is the one I trust above all else." Daniel's chest tightened. He had never imagined being the cause of a royal rebellion or the topic of an empire-wide debate. Yet here he was, standing beside her, feeling the weight of history pressing down, feeling the eyes of centuries judging every breath he took. Finally, the Empress took a deep breath. "Very well. Let it be known," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "The Cerati Empire does not bow to power alone. It does not choose rulers solely for lineage or conquest. We bow to virtue, courage, and heart. If my daughter chooses this human, then let it be so. Let it be written into the history of our empire." The hall erupted in murmurs and whispers. Some cheered silently, some scowled, some simply stared in disbelief. Daniel felt Lyrian's hand brush against his arm, and she gave him a small, reassuring smile. "You see," she whispered, "you have already changed them, Daniel. Your actions, your courage, your heart. It has made them see something new, something they did not believe humans could have." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and fear. He had survived death, danger, and the impossible, but now he understood that his greatest challenge was not the storm or the station. It was the scrutiny of an entire empire, the legacy of centuries, and the expectations that came with standing beside the woman he loved. Yet, for the first time, he also understood the truth that Lyrine had seen all along. Sometimes strength was not measured in armies, weapons, or power. Sometimes it was measured in courage, compassion, and the willingness to stand for what is right even when the universe seems determined to crush you. Daniel straightened, meeting the Empress's eyes. "I will do everything I can," he said softly, yet firmly. "I will honor the trust your daughter has placed in me. I will protect her, and I will serve the Cerati Empire with all my heart." The Empress studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Slowly, deliberately. "Very well," she said. "The Empire will observe your actions. We will test you further. But know this, your place beside my daughter is now possible. It is up to you to prove that you are worthy, not by strength, not by wealth, but by your choices and your heart." Daniel exhaled. Relief washed over him, but he knew this was only the beginning. The real trials, the ones that would test his humanity, his love, and his courage was still ahead. For now, though, he had survived the judgment of the Empire, and he had gained the first fragile acceptance of a people who had never believed in humans before. That night, the twin moons of Aurelis hung low over the palace, casting silver light across the crystal courtyards. The hallways were silent, the only sound the soft hum of energy that kept the palace alive. Princess Lorene led Daniel to a secluded terrace, far from the eyes of the nobles, generals, and emissaries who now whispered endlessly about the human who had won her favor. Daniel paused at the edge of the terrace, looking out over the city. His hands were still scarred from the shattered expanse, his body aching from the rescue. But more than the physical strain, a new weight pressed on him, the responsibility of standing beside a princess, a kingdom, and an entire empire that now watched him closely. Lorene came to his side. She did not speak at first. She simply placed her hand over his, her touch light but steady. Her silver eyes reflected the light of the moons, and in that moment, Daniel felt the weight of the world shift, not from the empire or the power, but from the trust of a single being who had chosen him. "You don't have to pretend to be something you're not," she said softly. "I don't need you to be a warrior or a scholar or someone with a crown. I only need you to be you." Daniel swallowed. His throat felt tight. He had faced death countless times, meteor storms, collapsing stations, fiery explosions, but nothing had shaken him like this quiet truth, that someone, the most powerful and radiant being he had ever met, believed in him simply because of who he was. "I don't know if I deserve this," he admitted. "I've never led anyone. I've never been anything more than just a human trying to do the right thing." Lorene shook her head. "That is exactly why you deserve this. You are not motivated by pride, greed, or ambition. You act because it is right. That is something no army, no noble title, no lineage can teach. That is humanity at its best." He looked at her, feeling a warmth that went beyond fear, exhaustion, or uncertainty. "I will stand by you," he said quietly, almost as if speaking it out loud made it more real. "No matter what the Empire demands, no matter the dangers, no matter the trials, I will stand with you." Lorene smiled, her expression softening. She stepped closer, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "And I will stand with you, always." For a long moment, they simply stood together, watching the city below shimmer like a river of stars. The empire was vast, dangerous, full of rules that Daniel could barely understand. And yet, here, in this quiet corner, away from judgment and expectation, the chaos of politics felt distant. All that mattered was the promise they made to each other. "I am scared," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not of the Empire, not of the trials, not of death itself, but of failing you." "You cannot fail me," Lorene said firmly. "Not because I am blind to your faults, but because I trust you. I have seen your heart. That is more than any human or alien or ruler has ever shown me." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling a clarity he had never known. The trials would be dangerous. The council would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But whatever awaited him, he knew he would not face it alone. And perhaps that made all the difference. "I promise," he said, his voice stronger now, "I will not let you down. I will be worthy of standing by your side. Not because I am perfect, but because I will always try to do what is right for you, for the Empire, and for everyone who believes in me." Lorene placed her hand over his chest, right over his heart. "That is all I need," she whispered. "All I have ever needed. You are human, yes, but your heart, your courage, it is something the galaxy has never seen before, and that is why I chose you." Daniel felt a shiver run through him. Here, under the twin moons, he finally understood the truth Lorene had known all along. Courage was not measured by strength, lineage, or weapons. Courage was measured by the willingness to stand for what was right, to protect others even at great risk, and to remain loyal to those you loved. He looked at her again, and in that gaze, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever trials